Transmite para usted Radio Anáhuac Querétaro, transmitiendo desde el Centro de Medios de la Universidad Anáhuac Querétaro, ubicada en Circuito Universidades número 1, El Marqués Querétaro, una estación de la Escuela de Comunicación y Dirección de Empresas de Entretenimiento de la Universidad Anáhuac Querétaro.
Radio Anáhuac Querétaro, amplía tus sentidos. Welcome to the Arcade, your favorite show in gaming, with your host, David Torres. Sit back and enjoy the show. All your favorite games are here at the Arcade. Let's play. And hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Arcade here on Radio Anáhuac Querétaro. I am your host, David Torres, and I am excited. Today it's Wednesday, as per usual. We have a show here on the Arcade. Hello to everybody who's watching on YouTube, on Facebook, on whatever your platform of choice is. I hope that you've been having a fantastic week. The end of the semester is in sight, and I am happy and I am excited. Because finally, I am tired, I am stressed, but here we are, and hey, it's time for another show of the Arcade. As per usual, I'm very excited to talk about video games, as per usual. Today, we are continuing on with our action game saga, and we're going to be talking about fighting games this time around. Obviously, as per usual, we have Insert Coin, our round one. I'm calling them round one because, fighting. So yeah, in round one, we got, talking about video games in general. Then round two, I'm actually taking the opportunity to talk about esports this time around. In round three, I'm talking about what's basically the most revolutionary fighting game at a social level, and honestly, the fighting game that I enjoyed the most, Smash Bros. I'm a Nintendo guy, come on. And then, as per usual, news and patch notes. So, let's go ahead into round one, Insert Coin. Ready to play? Insert Coin. Alright, so, Insert Coin, fighting games. What are they? How do you eat them? What's up with them? Fighting games are, I think it's pretty self-explanatory from the name, right? Like, it's basically games where, the main feature of it is combat. Usually, the biggest thing is between, two people. That's kind of the main basis of what a fighting game is, and it's kind of like a fighting game and it's more simple, and really at its most traditional, really. If you think about your typical fighting games like Street Fighter, which is kind of one of the games that are the most one of the most influential games in fighting games as a whole. You have your two characters, one facing the other. You have your health bars, you have your attacks, you have your combos, your punches, your kicks, your power-ups, and so, yeah, fighting games, I think it's kind of like a genre that is very understandable to think about. But even then, fighting games really are kind of, a lot more complex, because yeah, you have your traditional fighting games where it's in a 2D environment, and it's just kind of more based around actual human fights, so to speak. But then there's also different stuff. There's your platform fighters, such as Smash Bros or Brawlhalla, which they usually tend to be a lot more cartoony in essence, so to speak, more fantastical, more, there's a lot more, interesting special features, special moves. Then there's also the 3D fighters, like Tekken, for example, which honestly, it's kind of an interesting thing because I've never I feel like it's as a genre, or as a subgenre of fighting games, I feel like 3D fighters, they probably could be a lot I don't know. I feel like on paper they sound a lot cooler than they usually are, and they usually are considered by people. I think, for example, about Pokken Tournament, which is basically a 3D fighter based around Pokemon, and it happens in real time. And so I don't know, I feel like when you think about Pokemon fights happening in real time, you think of the cool stuff that happens in the Pokemon anime, where you're able to do a special move and jump and do interesting tactics and stuff. And it's playing Pokken. I mean, yeah, there's cool stuff that you could do, but it really doesn't necessarily live up to what you could imagine a fighter game, or a fighter game in a 3D environment is. Because ultimately I feel like there is only so much that video games can do at this point. Your controller only has so many features and so many things, and really the game itself can only account for you doing so many actions. So it becomes kind of an interesting thing of the true limitations of what games can actually do, just from the technological standpoint of what they can be programmed to do, or what they can be designed to do. So yeah, that's kind of a thing with 3D fighters. Though I feel like I kind of got completely sidetracked on an element of fighter games that are not necessarily super common or popular, even, because really the big thing of when you think of a fighter game, you think of Street Fighter, you think of Mortal Kombat, these more traditional fighters is usually what people will take into account for fighting games. Because even then, platform fighters, they are usually kind of in a league of their own when you think of those games. Because for example, Smash Bros. For I don't really know if it's even still like this, but I remember back in the day, it was announced not as a fighter or as a fighting game. It was announced as an action platformer, which it's well, I guess it is. But yeah, thinking about traditional 2D games, it really does kind of bring up the more competitive nature of them all, because really at the end of the day, I mean, a fight is kind of competition at its most primal, so to speak. And when it's a 2D character where the platformer, obviously you have things extra jumps and more fantastical things, but when it's just something as simple as two people right there on the street just kind of smacking each other, it becomes a more realistic thing. And I mean, even then, things like Mortal Kombat, where you have things like the Scorpion bringing out more gruesome whips and whatnot, obviously it's not necessarily that level of realism, so to speak, but it does kind of bring it to it has an element of simplicity and at the same time complexity, because really some of the main features and characteristics of the gameplay of a fighter, obviously you have things like blocking, shielding, there's combos that you do, and especially in those more traditional fighters, it's there can be some crazy combos that it's kind of surprising or kind of impressive, even how people can memorize these strings of button presses and whatnot. Obviously there's also the whole projectiles, which that happens more so in more fantastical games, but even like even the more simplistic ones or the most traditional ones have that, like Ryu with the God, I'm forgetting the name. If it's not evident, I'm not necessarily super well versed in traditional fighting games. I know of Ryu because of Smash Bros. Thank you. But yeah, like even then, it's like there's some projectiles. There's also zoning, which is actually like something that is very interesting as a principle in fighting games, and really this applies to all fighting games, like regardless of the type. Zoning basically, it's like the kind of like the way that I describe it, it's the like ability of like your own ability to be able to know where hitboxes are and like know where you can throw a hit so that it's safe. Because for example, like in most fighting games, or well, really, I mean, it's just kind of like part of the realism. When you throw an attack, there is a point after it where you're gonna be like vulnerable, because it's not like you can just be constantly in a hitbox of danger, so to speak. So there's always like an ending lag to any move that you do. And so zoning is kind of like, being able to account for that, being able to account for the hitbox of whatever attack you're doing, and being able to like really measure that kind of in real time. So I mean, yeah, fighting games are definitely like a whole thing in their own right. We're going to be talking a lot more about that level of like skill and complexity behind, well, really games in general in our next segment. But for now, we're going to go into a music break. Today, we're also doing like a special of music all from the same game, because I figured, why not? I mean, we're talking about Smash Bros. Today and experience points. Smash Bros. Is very well known for having good music remixes, so this is going to be Mute City from Smash Bros. So let's go ahead and listen to this, and we'll be right back with more here on the arcade. All your favorite games are here at the arcade. Only on Radio Nahua Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos. All your favorite games are here at the arcade. Only on Radio Nahua Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos. From the screen to the streets. Virtual reality. And we are back with more here on the arcade on Radio Nahua Querétaro. I am your host, David Torres, and today... voice crack, hello. Today, in our episode on fighting games, I decided that for virtual reality, it was probably like a very good time to talk about a very specific or a very interesting thing within gaming. It's kind of a really wild phenomenon, and yesterday as I was researching for this, for like talking about this, I watched so many videos and I was like kind of really shocked by how big it is. But esports as a thing, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. So yeah, today in this segment we're talking about esports. I guess realistically I could have probably talked about esports in the one about shooter games and talked about the violence of gaming in this one, because really I feel like most of the big esports are actually kind of based around shooters. But actually no, there's like a pretty big variety. Though I guess if you think about the bigger esports, yeah, mostly are shooters. But anyway, I am getting completely sidetracked. Let me start off by talking about, hey, what's an esport? So esports, basically, it's kind of like playing a game competitively at a professional level. And it is kind of shocking just how big the esports, the esports culture has gotten over the years. Really, it's basically starting to get a lot of the same recognition as like traditional sports get, which is something that's really cool. There's major universities where they have scholarships and like pretty big scholarships for people to play esports. There's people who are having complete careers and are making a pretty fantastic living off of just playing video games. Well. And granted, I think that's kind of the part of the stigma that I need to fight here, which is it's something obviously that I still kind of have, that level of surprise around it, because it's really not just playing video games, as some people like me might say. Really, there's actually a lot more that goes into esports than people might necessarily think right off the bat. Because again, like yesterday, as I was watching as I was doing research for this, I came across a lot of things about how esports players it really is a whole sport in and of itself. It is truly esports truly are sports, and because it really does kind of have a level of exertion that a professional esports player submit themselves to perform at the level that they do. There's basically a lot of also interesting issues that come with for esports players. Obviously things like carpal tunnel are a major thing, and basically it's a thing that people in esports actually end up developing carpal tunnel issues basically at the rate of twice as fast as regular people. And then obviously there's also kind of things like back pain, but one thing that's also really interesting is kind of the mental aspect to it. As I was researching, basically there's some really interesting training facilities for esports where basically people just kind of live there, and it's kind of a thing of they basically are training for 18 hours a day. It's kind of crazy, the training regiments that these people go into for it. And really it's kind of crazy, seeing esports it's like a whole other level of thing. Like in my experience, for example, with watching or playing competitively, like when I was first like the first things that I watched, like kind of one of the series that that first got me into watching YouTube. I don't know if they do it anymore. I've kind of fallen off their track. But there's these two YouTubers that way back when, like I think it's easily already been like over 10 years since they first did it. But it was basically Versus by the content creators Tagging Tukins and Josh Jepson, where they basically like raced through Nintendo games. Like the first one was like Mario Sunshine, and so basically they did like an entire race like of collecting everything in the game. And that kind of blew my mind. I mean, just generally, they like as commentators, they were absolutely hilarious. And that's kind of like part of the, or rather, and like even then, that's kind of like more of a casual speedrun as far as speedruns go, because speedrunning video games is like a whole other can of worms. And honestly, like it has like very similar levels of impressiveness as esports do, though honestly that's kind of a whole other can of worms that I do want to talk about at a different point. But I think the first like actual true like esports game that I ever watched was actually for Pokemon X and Y, for like the world championships of Pokemon X and Y, and I remember like watching that and thinking, oh my god, this is so cool, like, because obviously it's kind of like a whole more like strategy level, like there is an entire level of strategy and of like mental games that you play with the other player while in a strategy game like Pokemon can be. And so I remember just seeing that and I was like, oh my god, that is so cool. And so like I, with my best friend back then, like like we would make our teams and like we would fight against each other, and it was really, really fun trying to play more of a competitive way with that. Then over time, like Smash Bros obviously was like a thing that I rose to, or not really rose to. I think rose to is being extremely generous with how I do in Smash Bros. Like, I swear to God, I know a lot about Smash Bros. I feel like if I didn't self-destruct, I would dominate the entire world. And honestly, that's something that's true for me, both in Smash Bros. And just in general life. But anyway, like, yeah, like Smash Bros. Was definitely like another thing that, like, I mean, even since, like, for years, like, I've known of, like, you know, tournaments that I've wanted to participate in. And I usually underperform a lot. It's something that I just need to figure out how to be better. Then obviously there was like Overwatch, a game that I mention on here a lot, and I really, really enjoy. I've never actually watched the Overwatch League though. I mean, I've watched bits and pieces of it, but I've never like necessarily watched a complete match. But I will say, like, Overwatch is probably like the game that I would probably be like fairly decent at a competitive level, because I feel like as a team game that it is, like it has like a lot of room for, like, you know, leadership situations to come in, and I mean, I feel like I have pretty good like skills for that, especially with like some of the characters that I play in that game that are like very prone to like rising up to the occasion, so to speak. But yeah, anyway, I feel like I got very sidetracked. That being said though, like a lot of the like esports, I mean, just as I mentioned, and just as you could probably gather from what I've been talking about, like esports obviously have like a massive range in the kind of games that they have. Obviously, like the biggest esport game is League of Legends, which I personally have never played. I've been interested in playing it. But I've also seen that, you know, people sink a lot of time into it, and I'm like, that sounds interesting. I don't know if I necessarily, like, I don't know necessarily if I want to dedicate that kind of time, which granted, it's not like I don't dedicate that time to video games anyway. But, But you know what I mean. Like, it's always daunting trying to learn a whole entire new game. But yeah, like, you have your League of Legends, you have World of Warcraft. Obviously, there's your Overwatches, your Valorants, Fortnite even. There's games like Pokemon, which obviously it's not necessarily as fast-paced, but it's more of like a strategy game. You know, the way that I'd put it is like, you know, people consider chess as more like, you know, on that same level of sporty thing. Just out of the mental gymnastics, and Pokemon kind of falls into that for me. Obviously, there's more like single-player style, like Smash Bros. And yeah, there's just basically like a lot of range. And yeah, like esports at the end of the day, they are kind of like they are really like the sports of the future. Like if you look at all the movement that happens around some of these games, it is kind of really insane. And I am really happy to see how, like, you know, we're starting to get into a culture where like esports are more and more recognized. There's like a lot more money in it even. Like I saw statistics that like there's been several years where like esports have actually gotten like more views than, for example, the Super Bowl, which is kind of crazy. And I think it's just kind of like something that's really fresh, really new, and I can't wait for it to like expand more. I know, for example, like just last week, the League of Legends team from here in the university participated in a tournament. And like that's really cool. If anybody from the esports here is watching this, please bring back Overwatch. I want to be in the team. But yeah, so like I don't know, esports, really cool thing, and I am definitely excited to see how it continues to develop. That being said, though, we have reached the ending of this segment, so we're gonna go off into a music break. This is Bubblegum KK Smash Bros. Remix. And yeah, let's go ahead and listen to this, and we'll be right back with more here on the arcade. All your favorite games are here at the arcade. Only on Radio Nahua Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos. All your favorite games are here at the arcade. Only on Radio Nahua Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos. And we are here on our third segment on the arcade here in Radio Nahua Querétaro. I am your host, David Torres. And here for experience points, I wanted to talk about basically kind of one that is like, I mean, when you think about like big video games, just in general, but when you think about like, you know, big famous fighting games, I think there is no other game series to mention than Smash Bros. So Smash Bros. Basically, like, as a concept is really interesting because it's basically just, like, it started off as just, like, a collection of Nintendo characters coming together and fighting. But when you think about, like, the history of Smash Bros. And how it, like, developed over time, it is kind of crazy to see, like, how it started and where it is now. So like back before I was even born, and the Nintendo 64 era, when the first Smash Bros. Came out, it was actually kind of like a revolutionary thing for its time. And I mean, it's just continued to be revolutionary through basically every single installment of it. It's and that's actually kind of something that I want to go into for the entire series, because every single game that Smash Bros, like every single installment of the Smash Bros series has had its own impact in its own right and has been very important in its own way. So when you go all the way back to the first game in Nintendo 64, it was just like something that had not even been thought of at the time. You know, to bring these characters like Mario, Samus, Link, Kirby, Pikachu, and bring them all into a single game, that was basically unheard of in the video game industry at that point. And in a lot of ways, since back then, like, it's kind of been a time capsule of sorts for Nintendo games. For Nintendo games first, as we'll see later, it ended up becoming just a time capsule for basically all of gaming. But like basically the Nintendo 64 version, like, it's like created a lot of really interesting just foundation for everything that was to come. Then we would talk about Smash Bros. Melee on the Gamecube. I think that there is nothing, like, there's obviously like a lot of things that you can talk about Melee and how it really kind of cemented a lot of the things that now are kind of like traditions for Smash Bros. Like your event matches, your story mode, well, more your adventure mode, because story mode is a different thing. That we'll be talking about in a second. So like, and it installed a lot of things, but I feel like the single biggest impact of Melee is its competitive scene. Melee is actually a game that to this day like has a very active esports scene, and honestly, that's also something that I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention a lot of things in the segment about esports, but one really interesting thing that esports can do for a video game franchise is it basically like continues to give life to a particular game, even years or decades in the case of Melee after it's been released. And yeah, like for such an old game, like Melee still has a very competitive scene. More than anything because the fighting engine in Melee was like very sharp, so to speak. And so it has a lot of precision and has a lot of like very fast things that you can do. And so it like at its biggest, it really kind of has like a very polished like fighting community that like knows, like, I mean, they've basically been like studying this game for 20 years to find all the different combos, find all the different tricks, and it's kind of like, super interesting to see how this game has just evolved or continued to like be relevant even in lieu of the next 3 games that I'm about to mention in the Smash Bros. Series. Then the third installment was Brawl on the Wii. This one is kind of a game that's still, like, a lot of people consider it kind of to be the worst of the Smash Bros. Bunch. And granted, if you think about it from like a competitive perspective, I will agree. It's not necessarily the best for competitive. It can be a little bit floaty. It can be a little bit wonky sometimes. But what Brawl doesn't have in terms of competitive, it more than makes up for it in cool factor and imaginative factor, and that is basically all thanks to the Subspace Emissary. Basically, the Subspace Emissary, it's something that I wish that they continued to do in future installments. Basically, it's kind of like the story mode, precisely, where, whereas you had your adventure mode previously, where it's like, you could just basically, like, complete it with one character in, like, half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever. The story mode, Subspace Emissary, was a massive thing that basically, like, you met every single character through it, and it really kind of brought forward that element of everybody is here in the same universe and is interacting, which I absolutely adored. Like, especially too because like there was like a lot of really cool cutscenes, there was a lot of really cool interaction between the characters, and it was just kind of like fan service paradise. Just generally, it was such a fun like adventure mode to play. And I really hope that they do that again at some point. Honestly, and I guess I'm skipping ahead a little bit. There's a lot of doubts as to whether or not there's going to be another Smash Bros. Game after Ultimate. Honestly, I am fine if there isn't. I just kind of hope that they do another Subspace Emissary kind of thing, because really, the story and, it was such a cool thing. And granted, obviously, Brawl came out at a very nostalgic age for me. I must have been, 10 playing it for the first time. And it was just so cool. And then Smash Bros. 4. Honestly, this is particularly the one that I'm maybe the least attached to. But the way that I'd put it, it's basically the foundation for Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is a whole other thing that we're going to get into in a second. Smash Bros. 4 came out in the 3DS and in the Wii U. It was the first game in the series to come out in a double release, and it was actually really interesting because it allowed for you to basically cross-play between two different Nintendo systems, the two different Nintendo systems that were out and available at the time. And really, it didn't necessarily, revolutionize the Smash Bros. Formula, in my opinion, that much. But I think what it really cemented, though, was its ability, the ability of Smash to really, bring a lot of different things to the table. Because it was especially, when, you started having, more interesting character additions to the roster, because whereas in the beginning it was only Nintendo, in Brawl, for example, was when the first third-party characters were added in Sonic and Snake, and those two were massive, big deal characters to have added to this. And then in Smash Bros. 4 you have for example the addition of Pac-Man, who was also a really interesting thing. But then we come over to Ultimate, and Ultimate, it was always conceptualized as kind of the pinnacle of what Smash Bros. Is. Basically, it brought back every single character that has ever been on Smash Bros. Everyone is here. It's basically the whole thing behind the Smash Bros. The kind of the big marketing point of Smash Bros. Ultimate. how it brought back everybody, how it brought back like everything that had like been removed from previous games, and like it just made it all into one massive game. And even then, it continues to be like super interesting how now the third-party characters have like really just gone all over the place in the best possible way. Like, obviously you have your Nintendo characters, like those are never going away, but they've added Steve from Minecraft, Sora from Kingdom Hearts, Ryu, we got like Street Fighter characters, we got like all sorts of things from all sorts of like the gaming world. And it's really interesting how it's become like such a like pillar of video game culture, and how it's kind of like that time capsule for, if you want to know about a lot of different games, Smash Bros is a very good place to start. Like it there's obviously like a lot of series of video games that basically were rescued thanks to being included in Smash Bros. And that giving attention to them. And in a lot of ways, like Smash Bros. Is just kind of like one of the most impactful games ever. I could continue to talk about Smash Bros. Forever. I am inevitably going to have an entire episode about Smash Bros. At some point. Today is not that episode, however, so we're gonna go off into a music break. This last song for today is Being Friends, also from Smash Bros. We've been over it. So let's go ahead and listen to this, and we'll be right back with more here on the arcade. All your favorite games are here at the arcade. Only on Radio Nahua Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos. All your favorite games are here at the arcade. Only on Radio Nahua Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos. A new update just dropped. Patch notes. And we are back with more here in the arcade on Radio Nahua Querétaro. I am your host, David Torres. And we have finally reached our last segment of today, Patch Notes. Hello. So, we have news this week. Yeah, we do. Honestly, like, this was one of those weeks where I'm like, okay, there's, like, almost no news. But that works because I am able to, like, really focus on a big piece of news that I hadn't really, like, talked about, and granted I've been just kind of disconnected from. But basically, before we get into that, we actually do have a bit of news that's pretty interesting and sad. Obviously, like, this is something that I've been talking about, or that I even mentioned towards the end of last season of this show. Like, there were news coming off, like, chip shortages in, with how the supply chains around the world have been faltering and having issues and whatnot. Like, it's been an issue that, like, really has kind of affected the world for a while. And, like, it is something that has been kind of complicated for a lot of things. Naturally, with chip shortages, there's been a lot of shortage for a lot of different technology things, like everything from phones to cars and obviously video game systems. And it's just kind of been affecting a lot of things around the world. Like, for example, the Switch has already, Nintendo has already announced, like, a prediction of a fall in Nintendo Switch sales, simply because of this same, like, thing. Like, basically, the forecast has gone down from 24 million units to 20 million units. And so it's just something that's been affecting a lot of things. The CEO of Intel, that produces a lot of these chips, predicts that this shortage will last until 2024. And so, like, basically we're gonna be having issues with this kind of thing for a while. They have said, though, that they are making a chip production facility in Columbus, Ohio, which is gonna help with, like, a lot of the, production chain or supply chain thing. However, this is only gonna be functional until, like, 2025. So it's just gonna be a thing for the next couple of years, unfortunately. Now, that being said, though, I have a bit of news that I could very easily ramble about for a very long time. The Overwatch 2 beta has been out, and some lucky people that have gotten a link for it have been playing it, but fortunately they've also been, like, posting content and opinions and reviews about it online. So I've been able to, like, basically see a lot of it and observe and kind of have my own opinion about how, like, the changes that they had. Basically, this Overwatch 2 beta has been more so about the changes that they're doing in the PvP, like, more competitive kind of play. Like, it's been something that they've announced for a while, that they, like, Overwatch traditionally has been a 6-player versus 6-player team game. They're basically changing that to have 5 players only per team, and whereas you had 2 tanks, 2 damage, and 2 support, now you only have 1 tank with 2 damage and 2 support. And so this has been changing a lot of things. People, when these news had first dropped, there was, like, a lot of ambivalence about how this was gonna work. And, well, basically now that people are able to play it, a lot of like opinions have been coming out, and it's something that I've been noticing a lot, or with the videos that I've watched. It feels kind of like this, like it's like so many years had passed since the last like truly significant update to Overwatch, and now we just get this. It feels a little bit underwhelming, I would say. Because really, it doesn't necessarily feel like Overwatch 2. It just feels like Overwatch 1.5. Because it's basically really just tweaking on the like PvP aspect of it all. Especially too when the big thing that they announced, or that they've been announcing for Overwatch 2, was that it's going to come out with the story mode. And really, I feel like really the story mode is what truly constitutes the Overwatch 2 at the end of the day. It's like the truly more significant part of like what we're waiting for. And so, I don't know, I feel like getting the competitive or like the PvP revamp, well, yes, it's nice to get some new content. I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like they probably like kind of shot themselves in the foot by announcing it as Overwatch 2 beta. I feel like they should have just announced it as like, you know, the relaunching of competitive kind of thing, because it really kind of just brings a lot more. Like, I feel like that makes sense, because I feel like advertising it as an Overwatch 2 beta kind of just like really gets people's hopes up for something that's just not it. Now, as for the actual changes that they did, it's really interesting to see like a lot of how the gameplay has changed. I wish that I could be talking from experience. I wish that I could have gotten to play it. Honestly, though, this laptop here, I don't trust it running Overwatch half the time, so I haven't really been able to play it in a minute. I haven't really felt confident playing Overwatch in this laptop for a while. So I mean, that just contributed to me not playing this beta. But basically, yeah, like the whole tank, like there's been some changes. Basically, some for the good, some for the bad, some are kind of ambivalent. Really, kind of everything has been more so ambivalent than anything. Because, for example, the whole tank situation of, you know, only going from having 2 tanks to only 1, like, it really does change a lot of the dynamics. Because the tanks really, the role in Overwatch 1 was to serve as protectors for the rest of the team, as kind of enablers for the rest of the team to be able to do their thing kind of uninterrupted. You know, and you would have tanks that, you know, the 2 main things that they would do would be either to put up shields and protection for the other people, or to pose a big distraction to keep the enemy team off of your actual team. And so now it's kind of a little bit less that. Like, obviously, like back in Overwatch 1, there was like whole double shield meta, which annoyed a lot of people. Like, you were basically shooting shields half the time. Now that's not even possible, because you can only have 1 tank at a time. And so that does make some changes. But at the same time too, I feel like it makes it so that the tank of the team really can have like a harder time, you know, being able to like necessarily do what they want or play the way that they want, because now every single tank kind of has to fit the exact same role that they, like, every tank now has to fit the exact same role, whereas they used to be able to do different things. And from what I've seen, like, it's just kind of become a little bit more messy as a result of that, because it used to be a little bit more streamlined in this case of, like, you know, you get your whole team rallied behind your shield, or you would have like your whole team, like, you know, and kind of more of a formation. The changes that they've done in this Overwatch 2, it makes it so that it encourages people to like split up and do their own thing, and so it makes every character a lot more independent. which is nice in a way, but it also does bring a whole level of messiness that, I don't know, I don't necessarily appreciate that much. Granted, with this beta, it has been just basically played by completely random people. Like, there hasn't necessarily been like the ranking system to like pair people with people of about the same level of skill or stuff like that. So it is still a bit early to necessarily do any definitive rulings, because really the content is not definitive yet. It's just kind of like a little demo of what's to come. I mean, I am excited. I'm not impressed. That's kind of how I'd put it. It's hopeful. I feel hopeful for the future of Overwatch, even if we don't necessarily have that much to go off yet. But anyway, on that note, we have reached the end of today. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you so much to Ale over there for helping me control the situation. Thank you so much to everybody who watched. I hope they had as good of a time as I did. And I'll see you all in the next one with more here in the arcade. Bye, guys. We might have run out of lives for today, but in the arcade, the game is never over. For everything about gaming and what we love about it, join your host, David Torres, every Wednesday at 1:15 p.m. here on the arcade, where we have all of your favorite games. Only on Radio Querétaro. Amplía tus sentidos.